the paranormal to the extraordinary, from the weird to the wonderful. This is On the Odd.
Special guest. He's a man who wears many hats, and he's very well known in the UFO community. He has a background which includes working as a nuclear physicist for such companies as General Electric, GM, Westinghouse, TWR, Aerojet General Nucleonics, and McDonnell Douglas. You were also involved with highly classified projects such as nuclear aircraft, fission and fusion rockets, as well as nuclear power plants for space exploration. Whitley Strieber has said that you are a UFO master researcher. Please welcome to the show, Stanton Friedman.
I'm glad to be on, and that's TRW Systems, not TWR.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. See, that's why I don't have that job.
Except somebody will give me a hard time if I don't correct it. You know?
Oh man! All right. Well,
I like your attention to detail.
Yes.
So we also have Alex on the line. Alex is taking a little hiatus, but he wanted to come on because Stanton, you're definitely one of the people who has pretty much touched upon every facet of the UFO investigative world. You've written a number of books. There's really nothing you haven't done having to do with all of these things.
I've never seen a flying saucer.
You know what? That was so surprising to me. I was listening to an older interview, and they said, well, have you had any UFO experiences? And like you just said, no.
Nope.
So you purely have a belief on the evidence.
Evidence, yes. I never saw a neutron or a gamma ray, and I think they're real too. You know,
pretty.
That's a good.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Analogy. Yeah.
There's a number of questions I wanted to throw your way, and I just I guess I would start it in the most basic of ways, and that's all right. You didn't have a UFO experience, which is I think the way a lot of people are launched into this particular category. What got you bitten by the bug to seek out the truth behind UFO or USO or any of these type of higher technologies and possible cover-ups?
I'm a scientist. I read one book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Air Force Captain Edward Ruppelt. That intrigued me. So it didn't convince me, but it intrigued me. So I read 10 more books and was even more intrigued. And then I stumbled upon, strictly by accident, at the University of California, Berkeley Library, a copy that it's not a book, it's a report, Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14.
Sure.
And it hadn't been mentioned in any of these other books that I had read, and that surprised me. And it was an Air Force report, and what shocked me, the guy, Dr. Leon Davidson, managed to get this out. He saw it when he was working somewhere and got a copy. He included the press release that the Air Force issued at the time in the mid-50s. And that made me angry because I had the report, and in the press release it said, on the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those properly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions, if more complete observational data had been available. In other words, nothing to worry about, folks. The only trouble is I had the report, and I'm a data hound, and what do you mean 3% unknown? The unknowns, as it happens, were 21.5%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
a
interesting.
long way from 3, you know. Furthermore, they did a quality evaluation of all the sightings, 3,201 sightings. It was a big study. And the work was done by Battelle Memorial Institute, which I found out later because its name isn't in the report. There are no authors' names in the report. That was that strange.
Yeah.
And when they did the quality evaluation, they found the better the quality of the sighting, the more likely to be unidentifiable. Furthermore, they asked an obvious scientific question. Is there any difference between the characteristics of the unknowns, the only ones we're interested in, and the knowns, everything else, aircraft, balloon, astronomical, all this other stuff? So they did what is called a chi-square analysis, looking at 6 different characteristics: apparent size, color, shape, speed. In other words, if the two groups matched on all these characteristics, then probably one is just like the other. And the answer was there was no possibility. The two groups did not match.
Huh.
And so that got my excitement. This is Air Force data. Now, they didn't distribute the report, and you'll find that the debunkers practically never talk about the report.
No.
But that got me hooked because I don't like being lied to. I was working under security, and I know about evading the truth, but a flat-out lie bothered me. So I joined APRO and NICAP, the two major groups at the time, they're both gone now, to get their newsletters, find out what's cooking. And I've been at it ever since. I was active with a bunch of guys in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was working for Westinghouse and a bunch of the guys, mostly from the plant. We had a UFO Research Institute of Pittsburgh. And we had meetings, and we had speakers, and we investigated cases, and I really got moving along, and I kept up my interest as I moved on. I'm much to my surprise, a 3-year hitch guy. I mean, my dad worked for the same company for 37 years, and I figured, well, I joined GE right out of college. They had a lot of nuclear groups. I can work until I'm 57, and I'll retire.
Right,
Isn't
a
that
lifer.
great?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
after 3 years, I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I got out. When I got out, I saw they didn't have a plan where they wanted to go with this thing, and I told people I didn't think this place would be here in a year or two, and 16 months later it was closed.
Wow.
So I went to Aerojet General Nucleonics on the West Coast, and that was exciting. It was supposed to work on a compact reactor for space applications, which was exciting because I'm a radiation shielding guy, and weight is very important when you're going to put stuff up. And so it was a challenge, exciting materials and all that stuff. And that program got canceled. Then I got hired at General Motors, Allison Division. They had a military compact reactor program. And GM's the kind of place, if you're on the Detroit payroll, you can stay there forever. When the program was canceled, I had a buddy who stayed there. He was playing the stock market, but they wouldn't fire him because he was on the Detroit payroll. Well, I didn't work my way through 5 years of college to sit doing nothing or buying stocks or anything.
Yeah, not your thing.
So I got a job with Westinghouse Astronuclear Lab, and that was exciting because we tested the NRX-A6 nuclear rocket reactor propulsion system. And it was kind of a special system, less than 8 feet in diameter, power level 1,100 megawatts. Hoover Dam makes 2,000 megawatts, so and this is pretty small.
That's pretty massive.
And that was exciting. Well, the test was successful, and liquid hydrogen goes in very cold and comes out at 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so we had a successful test, and Aerojet had a successful test, and Los Alamos had one that produced 4,000 megawatts. And so naturally what you'd expect happened to happen. The program was canceled.
Oh, no.
Were these? Let me interrupt for a second. Were this propulsion system was meant to get a vehicle up into space without conventional solid rocket propellant?
Right. Well, the propellant would be liquid hydrogen, but no oxidizer.
Okay.
And hydrogen is the lightest and most abundant element, so you can get a higher velocity because there ain't no oxygen to drag around. waste your energy. So
did they actually get to the point where they were getting thrust from this, or just generating power?
Well, okay, the test was done on the ground.
Yeah.
So it was producing, I forget how many. There's a unit.
Pounds of thrust. Yeah.
It was, but then they canceled the program. And the thing that was wrong, the missing problem, and I saw this throughout my time in industry, there was no Admiral Rickover. Somebody who said, "This is where we're going with this, guys. You don't want to go there? Get off the train." They didn't know what they wanted to do with it. Worst meeting I ever attended in my life. I was out at Aerojet, our partner, in Sacramento, and my buddy says, "Hey, Stan, you want to go to a meeting about the what NASA wants to do with the nuclear rocket?" "Oh, I'd love to." Worst meeting I ever attended in my life. They had the faintest idea what they wanted to do.
Wow.
Well, we could do this, we could do that, we could put up Earth orbit, lunar orbit, a lot of possibilities, but no goal. And you don't get funded if you don't have a goal and produce something. That's why I admired the Admiral. He wanted a nuclear submarine. They had one in 1956. And nuclear-powered aircraft carriers operate for 18 years without refueling.
That's insane. It's incredible. And it makes so much sense that we should be focusing even now on nuclear power, because clearly, I mean, I know nuclear has a terrible reputation, but as with
everything, from the noisy negativists.
But as with everything, technology evolves, and it becomes safer and smaller and more compact. So, do you think that nuclear power is at all in our future, or do you think that it's just taboo? Me too.
Yeah. You have to say what for. You can use it for all kinds of things, and I see now they're talking about small nuclear power plants for cities, and there are a couple of hundred nuclear plants operating. But for propulsion, you can't beat it in terms of, thrust per pound, if you will. And it's an awkward measurement, but I do think it has a future, and certainly if we're going to space, I think we'll be using nuclear fusion. After all, essentially all the energy in the universe is produced by nuclear fusion. That's what goes on in all the stars, including the sun.
Yes.
And the nice thing is the stuff you use are isotopes of hydrogen and helium, and they just happen to be the two most abundant substances in the universe, so it's kind of handy. Wherever you go, you're going to find them. But what you need is a desire, like a Rickover. Somebody says, "Here's our goal." And the United States doesn't have a goal in the space program. You notice NASA hasn't been very active.
No, they've taken a back seat to Elon Musk's program, it seems.
Well, yeah, Musk at least knows what he wants to do. Whether he's right or wrong is not the point. He has a
vision, sure.
But, he has a vision, and like a Rickover. And so I was disappointed in industry, and I made the big jump. It was funny. After our success at Westinghouse, the program gets canceled, and I got laid off. I need a job. I looked around, and I got a great job offer from McDonnell Douglas in California. I would try to figure out how flying saucers worked. And boy, was I excited. Right up my alley, just what I wanted to do. And I'm driving across the country.
Wow.
From Pennsylvania to California, and I hear on the radio the program that I would have been working for was canceled.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, nothing like walking in for a new job, with all the paperwork, and the gal says, "You realize you just laid off 5,000 people." And I say, "Yeah, I realize that." They kept me for 3 months, and I did an exciting study of magneto-aerodynamics, got hundreds of references, which I was surprised at. And then I got a brief job with TRW Systems and to solve a particular problem that involved radiation shielding on a compact nuclear system. And then I was on my own, and I decided, and McDonnell Douglas was nice. They let me do whatever I wanted. I mean, they felt badly. They made me an offer, and, really no job, but 3 months is 3 months. And so I started calling colleges because of the time difference. I'm a cheapskate. It's cheap to call East Coast from West Coast between 6 and 8 in the morning, and I'm an early bird. And I was calling looking for lectures, and once I'd get a lecture at a college back east, I'd call nearbys to get piggyback talks, as I called them. And I did that for a lot of years because I was a good salesman. And you learned something that just like not all UFOs are alien spacecraft, not all colleges are going to book you this time. Yeah. But some are, and that's what matters. In other words, the guys that don't book you, it doesn't matter. They're not hurting you. Go on to the next one. Every salesman has told me this. You know, if you're selling insurance, you call a certain number of prospects, a certain percentage will make an appointment, a certain percentage of those will buy. And as long as you're willing to work hard to get those, on you go. So, you know, here I am, 700 lectures or so. I lost count a while back. But I'm retiring this year, so that's the big news. I'll be 84 in July, and it's time enough. Got to have some life to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, but do you think that you'll ever find the point where you're just sitting around watching TV sitcoms? I mean, you just don't come off as the type of person to just genuinely retire.
Well, no, not that way. You know, what I'm trying to do is to cut back on the travels.
Sure.
Look, I recently went to Arkansas to give a lecture. It took 4 flights for me to get there.
Holy cow.
That's work. That's a lot of airport walking, you know what I mean. And so, getting a little old for that jazz, but I'll be doing phone interviews. I am speaking. They're having a big event for me. It's Stanton Friedman Day in Roswell on July the 7th, I guess.
Fantastic.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Well, I'm the original civilian investigator of Roswell, and they know that they love me and I love them. I mean, you know, last year, for people who aren't aware of how significant Roswell is in the bigger picture, last year there were 220,000 visitors to the International UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell. And this is a town of 50,000 in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's not on a way to any place. It's 200 miles from Albuquerque.
Yeah, it's an incident. It's an incident that really took the entire imagination. I mean, so many different facets of imagination and the facts and the cover-ups and you know, people do bring up the incidents that occurred prior to that. You know, there's like 2.
Oh, sure.
But it's really Roswell that really seemed to embrace that people rather embraced. You know, the battle over LA was a fascinating story.
It embraced the government too, because after all, people spotting things in the sky, that's one thing. But when you recover wreckage that proves that there are alien beings coming here, it proves they have technology beyond yours. You want to, you know, pick up the wreckage, so to speak.
Sure.
Find out what's going on. And there are serious national security concerns. Where are these guys from? What do they want? They're going to attack us? Are they working with somebody else on this planet? The Cold War is on. You know, they're going to turn around because they're small guys, work with the Chinese because they're small? I mean, who knows? So Roswell changed, and also it gave you a chance to find out something. Details maybe about how they work, what they're made of, the saucers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether we've had conversations with aliens. You know, how many presidents have met with an alien? I don't know. I've heard that Ike did, but he's the most likely of all of them. If there was a negotiator, I mean, how the heck can you get the guy who led the world against Nazi Germany suddenly unite the forces of Europe against the Russians?
Right.
Not many people could have done that.
You know,
you know what I mean?
From a technical standpoint, do you, if you were to just look at the past, say, 500 years, it's really just in the past, say, 100 years, really the past 70 years that, technology has really gone to the forefront. I mean, we're
Yes.
living in the future currently, it feels like sometimes. And do you feel as though any of this technology or all of it, all the major stuff, was reverse engineered possibly from this wreckage and other wreckages?
I don't know. I will tell you this. There was an enormous bunch of progress starting in the 30s. And people don't realize we didn't discover the neutron until 1932, fission and fusion until 1938.
Mm-hmm.
And so things opened up. And do you realize the government in World War II built a mile-long facility to separate uranium isotopes in secret? And they were using 5% of the electric power of the United States to separate those isotopes because we needed enriched uranium-235, and don't come that way from Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a huge commitment. Only war would give you that commitment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Who would spend the facility cost over $1 billion, which was very much money. So now how much we've learned from the wreckage, it certainly helps. I've looked at some things that certain materials, and when I find out that the original work to develop that particular material was done at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of start questioning a lot of things, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have kept it secret. There was a Cold War on, and it was close to being a hot war. I think people today don't realize how close we came to starting a Third World War. So we needed to work as hard as we could to make sure, also to get our egos out of the way. There was an arrogance in the United States. The best example I know is when General Groves, who was in charge of the atomic bomb program, was asked in 1948, after we had tested the first A-bomb and, did that work, how soon would the Russians have one? And he hemmed and hawed and said, look, they've had a terrible war. They lost 20 million people. Much of their industrial capacity was destroyed. They don't have a means for delivering it. I would say it would be at least 8 years. Well, it took them a year and a couple of months. And that shook people up because suddenly we didn't have a radar net around the country. We didn't worry about airplanes coming because they didn't have any big ones until we saw a big celebration. Look at all those big Russian airplanes.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? So we were playing catch up in that sense. And, it's easy to forget. The Russians put up the first satellite. They put up the first man in space, the first woman in space, the first rocket around the moon. And it was only Kennedy motivating the country, to land on the moon.
It really did seem that way. He made that commitment.
He made the commitment, and everybody was with him. There was no resistance to that idea. We got to be number one, and we did it. Mm-hmm. We haven't always had that kind of a commitment.
No, I mean, it definitely was a magical moment. Even now you could watch his speech, and what he says is that, I mean, you've heard this a million times, that they're not choosing to do it because it's easy. They're doing it because it's hard. And that boosts every American's ego.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've gone through some ups and downs and attitudes and so forth. And look, I consider myself an earthling. I'm a dual citizen of the United States and Canada, so I complain about those two governments.
I've only been to this planet, so I really can't have much of an opinion.
Yeah. We're all earthlings. Well, I think we're all earthlings.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. The Chinese are moving toward a lunar base. They're talking about it anyway, and India's talking about a base. We're reaching out, but one of the biggest things that's changed, and there's no getting around it, is that we used to think that, Frank Drake, when he talked about the original work on SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, talked about there might be 6,000 or 8,000 places in the galaxy that could be sending signals this way. Well, with the Kepler satellite and finding, this came as a big shock to an awful lot of people, there are approximately 1.6 planets per star.
Yes.
Planets per star. So in the galaxy, we've got over 100 billion planets.
That's remarkable.
Not 6,000.
I think there was a recent statistic, I thought, where they upped that number and said that there might be 5 to 10 planets per star. In orbit. But
the point is, even with just a mere 1.6, where we used to think there were, 6,000 per 100 billion, we underestimated. Oh, of course, that would have meant that we overestimated how important we are. Aren't we special?
Right. Exactly.
No, we're not.
And how many times have we heard the words countless stars? It's, that just, there might not be life on each one of these planets, or
no,
the majority.
Not. Maybe only 10%.
only, right?
Yeah.
I do have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So we seem to have a focus, as a nation, or space programs that are kind of going on Mars, right? Why are we not focusing on returning to the moon and creating a launching space from the moon out, and then go to Mars? It just seems to me...
Right, no atmosphere. So much
it seems to me anyway, it would be easier, and easier being probably one of the most ridiculously difficult things ever to do. But just as difficult, if not more, less difficult than, say, just going directly to Mars. It just seems to me that we're skipping a step.
Do you see much leadership in the U.S. government?
None.
About reaching in outer space? I don't see any.
No.
I remember how excited I was because I was part of the space. I worked on aircraft nuclear propulsion systems, and then on nuclear power plants for space and the nuclear rocket engine. It was exciting. I mean, let's face it. We're sitting home listening over the radio. They piped it into us at Westinghouse. How long will the rocket last? We had no idea. Will it blow up in 5 minutes? I hope not. And the 10 minutes, 15, 20, 25, we went to full 60 minutes. There was a limited amount of liquid hydrogen we could store. But we fulfilled all the test objectives. And it was a great feeling. But they had no idea what they wanted to do with it. There was no leadership to say, we needed an Admiral Rickover. He's the best example I know of somebody. People hated his guts because he had a goal. And you don't want to go there and get off the train, It was, and we haven't had that kind of attitudes. The nuclear program, was one of those. And there you had geniuses. People like Enrico Fermi, who did the impossible, so to speak, and motivated other people to do more of the impossible. But we haven't had that kind of leadership to get out ahead. Let's go where no man has gone.
Sure.
The whole attitude.
Genuine, like exploring of new things.
Yeah, I've been very disappointed to see how little we've accomplished in since then.
Yeah, like 40 years. It seems as though we've focused on the small stuff. We definitely have iPhones. We definitely have communication down, but it seems as though the big stuff like disease and traveling out of the planet. They've really been left on the table. And, this coming from someone who has no real scientific background, though. This is just my, point of view.
Well, it's a question of attitude, really. The explorers had attitudes. It wasn't easy, after Columbus. Well, let's go to the New World, set up a new business.
Right, yeah.
Wasn't like that. And then when we defended, the French and the British and so forth, everybody wanted a piece of the action. but the spirit of let's get with it doesn't seem to be around much anymore, and that bothers me. I'm disappointed. I want my great-grandson to grow up in a world in which we are exploring. We're part of a galactic community, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see us turn in that direction. We got I don't know what the latest number is, over 7 billion people on the planet. Maybe it's 8 by now. I don't know. We are part of a larger system. And we can't just sit on our laurels and say, well, we're the only civilization around. We used to think, aren't we lucky? We're in the one solar system in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we're on the one planet that has air and water and stuff. Wow, we're special.
Yeah, it's working out well.
And it's kind of, now we realize there are others coming here. They would seem to be more successful in the sense that they're able to get here and we're not yet able to get out there. But when are we going to act together as Earthlings?
Mm-hmm.
To me, if you're going to explore from a planet, you should go with one nation, one planet, not what do we got? 195 countries. I don't know what the last number is. But,
I've brought up to Alex a number of times that either he'll send me a video or I'll send him a video from YouTube or whatever. And our first instinct is, oh, that looks fake. Or you have a hard time believing it. You're trying to, kind of be a self-debunker. And I just feel as though with video and audio, it's so easy to fake this stuff right now. What would convince the general public?
And that's distressing, and that's why it makes me angry that the government isn't putting some of the facts out on the table.
Sure.
I don't think we want technical data out on the table because you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies, and there are plenty of enemies who would like to use any new technology to clobber us. But I think we need to grow up recognizing that we all on this planet have something in common. We're us, not them. There's a larger universe out there, a larger world. And I'm disappointed that there has been, nobody like Kennedy, let's get together. And I don't know where that leadership's going to come from. But I hear the Chinese and Indians talking about setting up bases on the moon and Mars and stuff, and I don't hear that much from the United States.
Which makes
Elon Musk,
I'm sorry, go on, Alex.
A private, his.
Yeah, well, I'm all for privatizing. I mean, you need an incentive. And for any business, you recognize the right and the opportunity to fail. So you're risking something. You got yourself on the line. But I think we need to become adventurers. And look, there are plenty of planets that would benefit from planetary attitudes as opposed to nationalistic ones. That bothers some people when I say that. But like I say, I'm an Earthling.
Yeah.
So are you.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we're against the aliens. I'm saying we should join them in the circle of planets, not in the circle of nations.
One planet under God, that type of philosophy.
Yeah. So, Stanton, given your background as a scientist, someone who's done engineering in nuclear physicist, what is your thought about? And this is probably a very general question, but do you speculate yourself, and do you try to imagine how these beings are getting here? Do you think they are using methods of propulsion that we could possibly understand, or do you think it has more to do with? Okay.
Oh no, I think definitely. I think we're being laggard. I worked on a study of nuclear fusion for deep space propulsion in 1962. We spent $9 million Air Force dollars at Aerojet General Nucleonics. Dr. John Luce ran the show. What a great scientist he was. Headed the fusion work at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, as a matter of fact. And I mentioned fusion because essentially all the energy in the universe is produced by nuclear fusion. And people say, oh, that's A-bombs, H-bombs. Well, yeah, that uses it, but there's no reason you can't produce energy that way. And the point is that everybody anywhere is going to ask the question, how does that darn star work and produce all that energy? You know, in the 1920s, 100 years ago almost, we thought the stars produced their energy by burning gas. It wasn't until the mid-30s that, that's nuclear fusion, and we found out about nuclear fission, and it's a whole different ballgame. But what that means is that you can step up. In other words, you can go elsewhere. Let me give you a little a trend.
Yeah.
A big bomb, got to think about bombs and earthquakes after all, go together.
They're fun.
In World War II, say 1944, a big bomb was a 10-ton blockbuster. It released the energy of 10 tons of dynamite. Took a big airplane to carry it, too. That was in 44. Okay, 45, first A-bomb, 15,000 tons of dynamite energy release. First H-bomb, 1952. I mean, that's a big jump.
Tremendous.
We're not talking just a little more powerful.
Not even.
But in 52,
that's crazy.
Our first H-bomb, 10 million tons of TNT.
Yeah.
And the Russians tested one, the Tsar Bomba, love the name of it, after the 1960, released the energy of 50 million tons of dynamite. One bomb.
Through hydrogen fusion, right?
Yeah. And what that means is when you do that, you're a threat to the neighborhood and you're able to travel to other stars. And I think every civilization in the galaxy is concerned about invaders from elsewhere, you know, whether it's down the block. You know, we're used to being out in the middle of nowhere. Earth is 4.3 light years from the next star over. Big deal. Well, there are plenty of stars that have other stars within an eighth of a light year.
Yeah.
30 times closer. And so I figure the closer the neighbor, the more likely he is to be visited. And so instead of saying like Bishop Ussher did, 1650 or so, 1660, that the world is was created in 4004 BC. He went through the Bible and all the begatting, and 4004 BC, that's when it was all born. So 6,000 years ago. He left out 6 zeros. It's more like 4 billion 4 BC. Right. And suddenly, are we important? You know, were we in at the beginning of this big game? Heck no.
No.
And man's had a hard time understanding that. But I have to believe that many other civilizations have gone through the stage where they had the power to destroy themselves. In the situation we're in now, if we unleashed all our weapons, it would kill everybody. And, you know, we tend to forget. Why would aliens come here? One is to keep us from taking our brand of friendship, hostility, out there. I mean, look, we've already tested 2,000 nuclear warheads. Exploded 2,000. Test is an awkward sort of phrase, but only 2 on people, thank goodness.
Wow.
But if you explode all you got, you're going to destroy your place, you know. So you got to make choices. You got to learn to act, my grandfather would have said, like a mensch, like a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
But
instead of like nasty.
Let me ask you. But how does unleashing a massive amount of energy equate to traveling such a far distance? And I'm not asking.
Well, it's far. Far is a relative term. Mm-hmm. Look, it took Magellan 3 years. He didn't make it, but his ship did, to go around the world. 3 years. That was back in 1522 or something like that. Okay, the space station does it in 95 minutes.
Yeah.
technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. So we think how far away the stars are. Wow.
Yeah.
But they're not. I've had people guesstimate, taking an audience and say, multiple choice question. How long does it take at 1G acceleration to get to the speed of light? 10,000 years, 1,000 years, 100 years.
No, not as
How many think it's this, and how many think it's that? And an awful lot guess 1,000 years, 100 years. It's 1 year, one stinking year.
Mm.
So to get to the next step up the ladder, so to speak, it's not that big a deal. We know how to do it. I'm not saying it's not a large commitment. Of course it is. We already have nuclear-powered aircraft carriers that can operate for 18 years without refueling.
And how old are those? When did that technology? When was that created? Where they were powering it for 18 years?
Well, a couple of decades ago, actually.
That's what I mean. We had to evolve. I mean, we probably could create, essentially one that works, for 180 years. I mean, it's a really phenomenal thing. I mean, as technology progresses, and like you were saying, if you could create a way to harness this tremendous amount of energy, and use it for propulsion of some sort, you're now going the speeds that are all science fiction. You're now, but there are
because we didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We know already. Nuclear fusion is real. It's not imaginary.
Right.
And sure, we use it for bombs. What else would Earthlings use it for?
Sure.
I mean, come on.
But even if you were going 100 times, in theory, in Einstein's theory, you can't go faster than the speed of light. But supposing you can, and you're going 100 times the speed of light, even at that speed, the distances would be kind of far beyond. What?
That's a wrong concept. That's totally incorrect. It's off the table. There are loads of stars within 100 light years of here. There's 10,000 stars. And at the current notion of 1.6 planets per star, which would come as a shock to somebody from 50 years ago, that means 16,000 planets within 100 light years.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that if we could get to something approaching even just the speed of light, it's conceivable that it could take 100 years, at the speed of light. Less, okay.
Less than that. Remember, Einstein also said, and it has been demonstrated, as you get close to the speed of light, time slows down for the things moving that fast.
Right.
Takes a year at 1G to get to the speed of light, less than a year.
Okay.
And so time really, you go out, come back, marry your granddaughter's best friend. I mean, to put a different light on it.
No,
it's like sending mail is one way of communicating. Sending a telegram is another way of communicating.
So these are conceivably our neighbors, that are coming.
Yes. Well, I think it's up to a neighbor to be concerned about its own survival and security, and anybody paying attention to us. Our track history is, how shall I say this, miserable. We killed 50 million people during World War II. Mm-hmm. We destroyed 1,700 cities.
Yeah.
We've exploded 2,000 nuclear warheads. Would anybody think we were nice guys?
No.
Come on over for dinner, guys.
What are your thoughts?
That.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about, because a lot of UFO events, especially those documented by Air Force pilots and commercial airline pilots, they talk about erratic movements from these aircrafts that defy accelerations that we could, what we would think would be possible. So in a sense, they're actually compressing time. What are your thoughts about the theory of that they are getting here through not just high speeds, but through interdimensional types of travel?
It makes great science fiction stuff, but you don't need it, is what I'm saying.
Mm.
In less than a year, you're close to the speed of light.
Yeah.
And we accelerate particles at the Large Hadron Collider.
Sure.
Over in CERN. The 99.999% of the speed of light.
Yes.
That's us already at this, us primitives, whose major activity is tribal warfare. We're able to do that.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is, between the stars, there's a lot of nothings. They might just all go fast. And there's no restriction to going fast. And people, you can stand 30 Gs for 1 second, for example.
Sure.
I'm not volunteering.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask you, what do you think about the footage that Tom DeLonge released? I'm really following him a lot closer. He is the To the Stars Academy, and he seems to be doing some interesting stuff, or really kind of gathering the right people to release this kind of stuff. He has a very interesting video, I'm sure you've seen it, of an aircraft.
The Navy pilot?
Yes, the Navy pilot. And it's interesting.
The government's had loads of footage like that in the past. This isn't the first time.
No.
First time it's been shown publicly by semi-official people, if you will. What I've been waiting is for the other shoe to drop. I mean, look, they spent $22 million. There's got to be reports.
Yeah.
We haven't seen them. We haven't seen any of that. That stuff's the only chunks of footage we've seen. And there's got to be tons more than that.
Oh, yeah. Everything is recorded, right? I mean, no matter where you go, it's recorded.
We haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we record, we haven't seen.
Now, you're also involved.
And again, partly, remember, part of that is because you don't want the other guy to know what's going on, because he might learn more from it than you have and develop a system to do the same thing, and you're in trouble.
Right, and I think there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
You're
so
pretty...
I think I'm impatient, like I say, for the other shoe to drop. I'm very impressed with Luis Elizondo and those guys. But speak out, guys.
But so you've been involved with the Mutual UFO Network for a while, better known as MUFON. And
50 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, are you one of the founders, or?
Well, I was at the first conference, and I am going to be the Grand Marshal at the parade at the 2000 and what's next year? 2019 conference in California.
I'd say you were pretty active in its success.
What?
I'd say you were there from day one. Then, I'd say you were instrumental.
I've appeared at more MUFON conferences than anybody, or at least the last time I checked.
Now, they have a great reputation of taking their investigations pretty seriously and archiving a ton of data. And but what I'm kind of curious about is, and I couldn't find a good answer on this, and you could probably just answer it. What are they doing with this data? And is this data going to be released to the public at any point? Or is this really just to archive it and try to connect some dots? I'm just not really sure what the data is doing.
They're working in the direction of public release of as much as possible. It takes effort to do this properly. It isn't enough to say, gee, we had great reports.
No, I couldn't agree more. It takes money, it takes effort, it takes teams. It's just...
And so MUFON is I'm going to be the Grand Marshal at the parade in Roswell, as a matter of fact. Right. Whatever that means. I don't think I get to ride a horse. I hope not.
Wrapped in, I mean, I think that's
they
great.
Are moving. They're trying to archive stuff. They're trying to get more of it out there, making more of an effort to put out publications, let the world know what's going on. Jan Harzen is actively pursuing communication on a much larger scale. And I'm all for it. I think we need to. And, you know, the forces of evil are still out there. And I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about the nasty, noisy negativists, the naysaying newsmen, the ancient academics and fossilized physicists who say there's nothing to this stuff. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up. Can't be real.
Right.
There's still some of that going on, you know, like it or not.
I'll never understand scientists that don't question their own science. You know, you have to always look for other answers. And these people, they've come to conclusions, it seems.
Yeah, we need...
Go ahead.
No, just that we need a more positive approach. There are plenty of scientists. If this were true, I would know about it, and I don't, so it must not be, and I'm not going to waste my time.
I agree.
There's a lot of that going around, and I run into it, and I don't worry about it. Look, after the first 600 colleges I've been at, I know that it's okay. I've had 11 hecklers in all that time, and I'm pretty much of a loudmouth, so anybody wants to take me on. I've done debates. I get a kick out of... I was so hoping that the debate was scheduled with Michael Shermer.
I have this written down, and I had a question about this because this was a big deal. This was like the Rumble in the Jungle. You know,
yeah, and then it was
Muhammad
canceled, damn it.
But yeah, this was like one of these things that people were talking about, you know, and it seemed like a lot of fun. I saw it, I looked it up, and yeah, it's TBA currently. But hopefully you do that soon, because it would be an interesting thing.
I wanted to very much. I've done debates before, and I got a real kick out of Michael Shermer, head of the Skeptic Society.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We did a debate on Coast to Coast, and I got 80% of the vote, and he got 20%. At least with Seth Shostak, he got, I got 53, he got 37, and 10% said, I don't know. But with Michael, he didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And I was all set to debate him on April the 8th in Vancouver in a big auditorium. I was really looking forward to it.
I looked it up. It's a beautiful venue, too. It would be aesthetically pleasing to be there watching that. I also wanted to bring up a couple of your books. You work closely with Kathleen Marden, who is also very knowledgeable, like yourself. And actually, she's going to be coming on the Odd next month. She's really busy right now. And, you know, I actually, I was going to ask both of you to come on at the same time, and I just thought that would be just sensory overload for myself. I wouldn't be able to handle it. Because I've seen the both of you in interviews together, and it's intense. I just, you know, you guys really seem to work well together, and you kind of riff off of each other.
We've done 3 books, you know.
Yeah. But fact, fiction, and flying saucers. This, I love, there's a certain fun aspect to the book that you do, and I think your personality is kind of what I'm touching upon. You have I'm taking it dead serious, but you're not afraid to crack a joke. And that's right. And it comes through in this book, which I kind of flipped through very quickly, but it's a really fun book. Not just fun.
Well,
I don't mean fun.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because humor is part of communication. Your mind is more open after you've laughed a little bit, I think. And I'm not a comedian. I'm not a stand-up or anything like that. But I find that humor does loosen up audiences, and it makes you human too if you get a laugh out of the audience and other people see that. So people are interested in the subject, and I enjoy speaking, and I'm not a masochist. I was surprised at how much I was in high school debating, and I've kept the same rules. When you're in debating, you have to tell the truth, and you have to have facts in hand, and you have to be ready for almost anything, and you have to know both sides of the story, because the next time you may be debating on the other side. You know, so that comes in handy when you're dealing with a touchy subject like flying saucers. You have to know the questions that the nasty, noisy negativists are going to ask and be ready to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the real world we live in. If you can't do that, ask any politician. You better be ready.
No, I love your approach because, you know, somebody can just say, well, clearly it's fake. And it's like, all right, now that we have that dealt with, now that you've gotten that off your chest, now let's get to, you know, the science that may be backing it up or the evidence. Tell me how it's not possible. Yeah. And I love that. I think that's really important. On the other hand, I think that the UFO community takes itself just a little too seriously sometimes, to the point where it's like, crack a smile sometimes, you know? But yeah, there needs to be a fine line with it all.
We need to have more active, serious discussion, and we're not getting enough of that. No. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I'm getting old. Obviously, I'll be 84 next month. It's coming on right ahead. And so there needs to be a lot of people taking up the cudgel, so to speak.
When is your birthday?
On the other hand,
if you don't mind me asking.
July 29th.
Oh, really? It really is coming like right up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Peter Jennings was also born on July 29th.
Oh.
So was Benito Mussolini.
Yeah, nice.
Stanton, I ask everybody this question. Are you a lefty or righty, handwriting-wise?
Right-handed.
Oh, okay. I still like you. I'm a lefty. My son... I'm a lefty. My son is lefty. Alex is a righty, so...
Yeah. But I wanted to ask, one of the things I read about in something, a discussion I guess you were having with somebody about the incident on Route 3 where, I don't know his last name, but Betty and Barney, that the famous story of them being abducted, which I think you...
Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah, Barney Hill. And the subject of extended human consciousness came up, mind control. And I thought it was really just fantastic that you were open to this as a possibility. Whereas...
Well, the evidence points in that direction.
It does.
Yeah, and it's one of the important aspects of the problem. I think we're naive, we're young, we're inexperienced in the larger world. I think there's far more to be learned about reincarnation and telepathy and, you know, all that sort of stuff. I think these things are real. We just don't know how to handle them.
Yeah.
And I think we will. And I think the aliens seem to be able to control our thinking, and that's an important skill. It's scary, obviously.
I think this fear that you touch upon is one of the reasons why so many people are resistant to accepting the possibility of aliens, because it's a loss of control and feeling that someone is smarter than them, and perhaps you know.
Our egos get in the way. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to learn to live with that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Now, you said previously that you have never had a UFO encounter.
No.
But what about, have you had any personal paranormal experiences or anything like that from the spiritual world?
Not that I can think of. I've led a very dull life. I have nothing.
Yeah, you're a pretty boring person, Stan.
Whatever.
You're a pretty dull individual.
You're right.
No. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. The hour flew by. I do have one question. As a man turning 84, what's your secret? I mean, you appear to be as sharp as a tack. I've met 64-year-olds that are, 50. I'm 45, and I'm not nearly as on the ball as you. Is there
keeping active and busy and doing a lot of thinking about a lot of things, not sitting back and watching the tube.
Right. I mean, it's a great legacy that you've created, and it seems to be ever going. Like, Do you have a project on the books in front of you?
Well, I'm thinking about a memoir, possibly, but I'm going to let this Roswell. I'm the guest of honor, so to speak. I'm going to let this stuff go by.
Yeah.
And then we'll dig into the real future.
Yeah, let it come and go. Enjoy it. It sounds like it's going to be a really incredible thing, and then somebody who is in New York, unfortunately, will not be able to make it. I wish I could.
Too bad.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to guess that it'll be streamed, or I'll be able to see some remnants of it. That's July 7th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Well,
should be fun.
If you want to find out more about Stanton, you can visit him at his website, stantonfriedman.com. I'm going to put a link to your books, your website, and really anything else you want, not only in our show notes, but also on our website. Stanton, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your morning to speak with us.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I should say I autograph all the books I send out.
Ooh, so you got to put that in there. You gotta,
all autographed.
Yeah, I you know what?
Okay.
There's something about that I have a personal love of things that were touched by an author. I come from publishing.
Oh, good.
Actually, Alex, also with publishing, but we love the tactile touch of books, and when an author has actually put their fingerprints on it, I think it's I don't know. It's a connection. That's all. Have a wonderful morning, and we hope to speak with you again soon.
Yes, thanks again.
Okay. Goodbye.
Doesn't matter.